Hello everyone, this is Harmon Smith, and I came across a very interesting article while I was playing Nintendo Switch games and having a blast, by the way. Nintendo's crazy operating profit over the past year. Let me see, can I get rid of this? How do I just wanted to show it to you. Darn. There we go. All right, Nintendo's crazy operating profit. So here we have some of the biggest gaming platforms, the biggest gaming companies in the world, right? And there's kind of a big gap between these two numbers over the past year. Isn't it funny? We're told year in, year out, every other day it feels like, oh, Sony's doing well, they're the number one brand in the world, they're the most popular gaming platform, and then you see shit like this, like shit that strongly indicates that Nintendo has basically toppled not only them, but a vast majority of their partners. It's just phenomenal just how these companies that refuse to support Nintendo are constantly losing money. And I gotta love how Konami is on here. They made more money than Sega, Capcom, and Ubisoft despite not making video games. It's unbelievable. It really is unbelievable to see people continue pushing this narrative that, like, oh, PlayStation 4 is doing really well, it's one of the most successful gaming platforms ever. It clearly isn't. Like, Switch has been outpacing it pretty consistently since it launched, and people don't necessarily talk about it in that context. They generally spin it as like, oh, Nintendo's doing pretty well for themselves, but then they'll turn around and say that, like, oh, Sony is still number one though. Sony's still the best. It's just plain laughable. Just looking at these charts. And it's really interesting too, seeing how how drastically lower all these big third parties are. You know, with Square Enix, Konami, Sega Sammy, Capcom, Ubisoft. These companies that constantly shit on and refuse to support Nintendo are just losing money hand over fist. Right now, it's about what I said earlier. Right now, PlayStation is basically being propped up by Activision and Blizzard and EA. Call of Duty and sports ball. That's it. That's the only reason that people are seriously buying these consoles. And Take-Two will make a Grand Theft Auto game eventually, and they'll go up way up when that happens. But it's going to take like 7, 8, 10 years. Like, GTA 5 came out in 2013. We haven't gotten a single game since then. We're reaching the point where Take-Two can't make a GTA game. It takes them 10 years, right, to put out a single GTA game. They'll make money off GTA. GTA is a household name, but what I think is going to happen is that it's going to take so long to make and be so expensive that no matter how popular it is, it's going to lose popularity. Like, really, at this point, it really is just a matter of Saints Row or Sleeping Dogs or some other clone game, right? Like, just coming out more consistently, more frequently, and taking the attention away from Grand Theft Auto. It's really only a matter of time. It's not going to be Watch Dogs for sure, because Watch Dogs is shit. By the way, Sleeping Dogs is absolutely the best GTA clone, and I hope it makes a comeback. Nintendo should acquire it and make that their premier GTA clone game. That would be a dream come true for me. But Take-Two has GTA, but that's really about it. And I mean, BioShock isn't a big deal anymore. Nobody's talking about BioShock. Well, I've noticed people are talking about BioShock now, which makes me think they're going to do a revival, and it's going to be sort of like Sly 4 or any of these other 4 PlayStation franchises where they just sort of it just sort of goes away after that. It's not going to be as well received as Infinite. I can pretty much guarantee you that from the onset. Activision Blizzard, of course, it has Call of Duty, which is the most successful annual video game franchise in the world. It does outperform Pokemon. Well, mainline Pokemon. It's weird, right? Because Well, for one thing, Pokemon actually innovates and changes and evolves, right? People actually stick with and appreciate every Pokemon game, even the extremely controversial Pokemon Sword and Shield. And as I found out when I played Call of Duty on PC, nobody sticks with these old Call of Duty games. Like, Call of Duty is basically been going downhill for years, and right now they're sort of in this nostalgia milking phase. Like, it's incredible how people like will come on my comment section and tell me to play like the new Modern Warfare, because apparently new Modern Warfare 2 is a thing. Like, really? I have no idea what's going on with that. And of course, they have Overwatch 2, the most overrated video game on the market. I'm not sure how much that contributes to the number, because I do think Blizzard has actually been a detriment to Activision as a whole, right? Because all the controversies they've been involved with, the decline of WoW, no StarCraft in sight, the whole Warcraft 3 debacle, Overwatch being super overrated. It doesn't hold up. It's not going to hold up in the long term. Bandai Namco, I have no idea why they're this high. Like, I would have thought Take-Two would be more profitable than them. Like, is it just the anime fighting games? I have no idea what Bandai Namco puts out other than like these fighting games. And yeah, I mean, I guess I like them, but like I didn't think they were all that successful. Like, is it just Tekken 7? Like, what else have they made in the past year? Well, Tekken 7 isn't a year old. When I talked about Tekken 7's a couple of years old. Yeah, what have they released in the past year that's been that big? I have no idea. And that's another thing too. This is last year's, right? This is presumably before the Corona crash. So next year it's going to be severe. Next year might actually be what clinches it for a lot of these companies, Sony especially. Without, Konami, losing Konami was a big hit against them. Like I talked about, they don't have Metal Gear, they don't have Contra, they don't have Silent Hill, they don't have shit, right? They're losing money left and right. Corona could very possibly sink a lot of these companies, like Sega Sammy, Capcom, Ubisoft. Ubisoft lost money, right? They're not recovering. You know what I mean? Like, once people start to wake up and realize that, like, hey, all these annual Assassin's Creed games, they're not very good. I would much rather be doing something else, like have sex. Like, that's all it's going to take to tank these franchises. People just getting sick, bored, and tired of these annual releases. And I don't think Ubisoft may very well, looking at this chart, be the next major company to go, and for good reason. I hate them. I've hated them for years. I've hated them ever since the Watch Dogs debacle. Since Rayman Legends 3 was delayed, Rayman Legends was delayed on Wii U for no reason. Fuck Ubisoft. I don't care what people say. Oh, and Mario Rabbids wasn't that good either. I mean, not that good. It was okay. And they made Starlink, which was garbage. I wonder if that contributed to this figure here. And of course, Beyond Good and Evil 2. I should make a video about that. Yeah, remember Beyond Good and Evil 2? Remember that exists? Well, anyway, Capcom. It's interesting. I was about to make a video about Capcom actually. Monster Hunter World. They just released a statement insisting that Monster Hunter World was their biggest success ever. Like, if that's true, hot on the heels of like Resident Evil 2 remake, Devil May Cry 5. Why isn't that number higher? It's really, really curious to me, and it makes me think that Capcom has more problems behind the scenes than they may be revealing to the public. Because all I hear from them is like how well they're doing right now, how big they are, and suddenly I look at this chart and I think of all the shitty games they've released. Resident Evil 3 remake, Devil May Cry 5. Street Fighter 5 is on PC. Like, all these crazy debacles, right? Like, I don't know what they've released in the past several years, right? Other than maybe Monster Hunter World, but that was mostly promoted because, like, it was a Nintendo exclusive franchise that was no longer Nintendo exclusive. So, of course, people were going to defend it for that reason. And Capcom was promoting it as a big success for that reason because they wanted to stay off of Nintendo hardware. But, yeah, I think it must have been a bad move for them because, oof. Unbelievable. Of course, Sega Sammy. Sega's been going downhill for years. I'm surprised they're making more money than Capcom. I mean, they have Yakuza. I guess they have Persona. I mean, Nintendo. Okay, so what should happen? Basically, I think what should happen is that when these companies start going downhill, Nintendo should acquire some of the franchises, not the companies themselves, the franchises. So Nintendo should acquire, Yakuza and Persona from Sega, not Sonic, because Sonic should just die. Metal Gear from Konami, Mega Man from Capcom, Resident Evil from Capcom, not Devil May Cry. They have Bayonetta, they don't need Devil May Cry. And then Final Fantasy from Square Enix, Dragon Quest especially from Square Enix, assuming they go bankrupt. But we'll have to see how that turns out. I expect the number is going to, Square Enix is going to drop drastically in the next couple of years because of Final Fantasy VII-R and just how much of a disaster that is, and how they have no major cards left to play. Like, the remake of Final Fantasy VII was the big ace in the hole, and it was a complete disaster for them. Even though the public isn't admitting it, I don't think people are going to stay enamored with a franchise forever. Like, remember all the hype that Yakuza 0 got from people who were desperate for new games on PS4? And did you see what happened with, like, 6 and then 7? And then, like, the Kiwami remakes? Like, nobody bought them. Like, there was no real hype around them for a wide variety of reasons. Like, people will usually just call the new game shit. Like, Kiwami 1, 2, 7, 6, like, they're all shit in the eyes of a lot of the hardcore third-party obsessed freaks. It did not get the same hype it got. And Sega, of course, isn't going to be able to put out a Persona 6 anytime soon. Yakuza's going to... They're not going to be able to put out a new Yakuza anytime soon. It seems like it's going to be a complete train wreck all around. Just unbelievable. All right, so... And the more of these companies that go downhill, that's less and less games for PlayStation. Not Nintendo. Nintendo will continue putting out high-quality titles no matter what, because they develop pretty much all of their games in-house, which has led to this gargantuan amount. And Sony keeps allowing these companies to piggyback off their giant corporation, and that sort of led to this PlayStation-obsessed culture we live in, where these companies just refuse to develop for Nintendo hardware, in spite of the obvious success this has had in Japan. Look at all these Japanese companies that just aren't making money because they aren't supporting the most popular console in Japan. They are desperately trying to keep Sony popular, and I think going into next year, we're going to see this narrative that, like, we're going to make games on PS5 that can't be made on Nintendo Switch. So they're going to try and push that narrative going into next year. Let's see. It's a NeoGAF thread. So there's all sorts of stupidity. I just want to highlight some of this stuff. Some of the damage control we see from the PlayStation fans. Wouldn't Sony have lower profits due to heavily investing and ramping up the PS5? Yeah, of course. Damage control right off the bat. PS5 is going to be a disaster in and of itself, as I've talked about, because of the virus, because of all the situations we have, and because there's no real appeal in the PS5 anyway. We're past the point where new consoles are going to make games look better, and I think normies are going to start appreciating this very, very soon. By the end of next generation, for sure. Like, PS5 wasn't all that much of an advantage. Oh, look at this! This is the main reason I wanted to show this off to you guys. Honestly, this is super shocking to me. There's maybe one game that was any good from Nintendo in the last 10 years or so. Zelda, Breath of the Wild. The rest of the pack is complete shovelware if you're over 6-year-old. I love how he says maybe, like, oh, he's grudgingly admitting that Zelda might be a good game. This is the mindset these people, the mighty squirrels of the world, are in. Like, Nintendo can't possibly put together a good game. Yeah, fuck Splatoon, fuck ARMS, fuck Octopath Traveler, fuck Mario Odyssey, fuck Star Fox Zero, Tokyo Mirage Sessions, Paper Mario Origami King, like Super Mario Maker 2, Fire Emblem Three Houses. Yeah, all of that is garbage. Zelda Breath of the Wild is the only good game on Switch, and it was a Wii U port, so you should just emulate it on your PC. No, that's really stupid. And this is the narrative they've been running with for years. This is literally what the PlayStation propaganda machine has been using the game media to propagate and push. Pure propaganda since PlayStation was introduced, right? Like, I remember it being old news that Nintendo was for kids when, I remember people parroting that narrative when I was 10 years old. 10 years old, I was hearing people say that shit. And here I am, all these years later, still telling these kind of people that they are full of shit. Just unbelievable. I was playing Metroid Prime 3 then. Oh wait, no, that was a little bit later. I was older than 10 when that came out. I was playing games like, Super Metroid, Final Fantasy VI, stuff like that then. Like stuff that was meant for older people, right? Like I was playing all this stuff that older people like on Nintendo hardware. It's not... It's just bizarre. It's just bizarre, these the narratives that these people these push. Nintendo doomed, I tell you. Well deserved though, with a strong first-party software output. Plus, the console is a great idea that has mass appeal. Of course, the profit is going to be higher when you make cheaper hardware and the games cost a lot less to make, yet they still sell as much as more. I love how people always try to promote this as like a bad thing. Like my business. Maybe I shouldn't. Man, it's just... These people don't understand business. Like, of course, you're going to want to make more of a profit by using cheaper materials. Like, that's the benefit to the weaker hardware. It's more profitable, and they can put that money to the actual games. Like, it's not complicated, and yet people constantly push this, like, cheap hardware as a bad thing, even though the hardware is technically way more impressive than the PS5. You get more for paying less, essentially, when it comes to Nintendo hardware. It's interesting to see people, like, always go on about, like, CDs and DVD players. Like, what about the actual games? Like, come on. So Nintendo last FY is the highest ever recorded for current-gen console makers. Sony relied heavily on third-party games, so profit margin isn't going to reach the same tier as Nintendo. Yeah, Nintendo first-party generated more profits than third-party games. This is probably one of the reasons that third parties don't want to support Nintendo, actually, is that, like, Nintendo would make money off of third-party game sales and also make the money from their first-party games. So basically what that means is that, like, no other corporation would be able to compete, and they're desperately trying to prevent that from happening ever. And this is the real reason for the obsessive support of, like, really dead, irrelevant platforms like PC and Xbox, is that they just desperately need to stay off of Nintendo platforms in order to sell people on mediocre games, sell them DLC, and just continue with these poor business practices. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild generated more revenue and profit than any Sony and Microsoft first-party titles in the US and Japan. Probably worldwide too, as the current price of the title is still at $60. Yep, it's stayed relevant a lot longer than Skyrim has. Yep. Let's see. Let's see. It seems like some people have hard time to find values. Well, we get the general idea. I don't think we need to read the entire thread. I didn't read the more recent. Oof. Yep, yeah, we don't need to read the entire thread. So basically, that's the situation. Nintendo is basically on top, probably for good this time. It's just a matter of time of seeing just which third-party developer goes under first and how that's going to affect Sony's bottom line. Like, with each third-party leaving the industry, with each of them stop developing AAA games, that's going to be less and less reason to buy a PlayStation. It's going to be interesting to see if it's possible for GTA 6 to make a release on Nintendo Switch. It should. GTA 5 should have been out like day one. That really should have been a day one Nintendo Switch release. But it's still not out, by the way. Take-Two, yeah, just unbelievable, embarrassing. They gave us LA Noire instead. If really expecting people to play that shit. I am, I don't know, like, it really could be any one of them. You know what I mean? Like, we're at the point now where, like, one major disaster is going to sink, like, cause a domino effect where it's going to, like, impact Sony and therefore impact all these other developers and sort of prop up Nintendo because you don't need Overwatch. You have Splatoon. You don't need, like, Tekken 7. You have Smash Ultimate and ARMS. You don't need, like, a lot of this stuff. And, I think with time, more and more people are going to realize that. Now that people are pretty much only buying Call of Duty and Sports Ball, right? The sports games for their PlayStation 4s, why in the world would they ever upgrade to a PS5? Once people start asking these questions, we're going to see more and more backlash towards Sony. The PlayStation console does not need to exist. Nintendo is the only one you need to play.